Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tales, where secrets slip, lies unravel, and the truth always has a twist. Real stories, raw confessions, shocking betrayals. Drop a comment if you've ever caught a red flag too late. Now, let's get into today's tale. You're nothing but a burden. Get out. Never in my life did I think I'd be kicked out of my parents' house on my birthday. Today is my 28th birthday. A party thrown by my parents. A day that was supposed to be joyful. I slipped into my dress and reached for the living room door. The air was cold, like needles brushing against my cheeks. But as I stepped inside, something about the house felt wrong. I wasn't expecting balloons or thoughtful gifts. Still, the living room lights were harsh, and the small group of friends and relatives gathered there wore stiff, uncomfortable smiles. My mother busied herself with the table setting, never once meeting my eyes. My father, grinning with a whiskey glass in hand, was already on his second pour. I forced a smile for the guests and slid into an empty chair. Tension rippled through the room. The party stumbled forward, heavy with awkward small talk and forced laughter. Glasses clinked too loudly. Not once did my parents say happy birthday. No warmth, just mechanical gestures. I stared at the untouched cake sitting in the corner. Something was coming. I should have known. My father never missed a chance to be cruel in public. Halfway through the party, he raised his glass and stood, drawing everyone's attention. With a practiced grin, he motioned for my mother to bring something forward. It was a hat. "We thought our dear Elena deserved a special crown," he announced. My heart dropped. For a brief second, time froze. My mother placed the hat on my head. It read, "Just a burden." Laughter erupted. I searched my mother's face, desperate for any sign this was just a tasteless joke. But she wouldn't meet my eyes. They had planned this. This wasn't a celebration. It was an execution. Slowly, I took off the hat. Every eye in the room was on me. They were waiting for tears, for begging, or for a breakdown. They could use it to justify their cruelty. "You're nothing but a burden. Get out," my father said. "You're an adult now," my mother added, irritation in her voice. "You shouldn't be living here anymore. It's time to start your own life." "You're right, Mom," I replied. "You're absolutely right. But you could have just said leave. Why did it have to be a public execution?" "Don't be so dramatic," my father scoffed. "You're ungrateful after everything we've given you." "I understand," I said. Finally, my voice was calm, shockingly calm. "I'll leave tonight, but you don't even realize what you're about to lose." I turned to the guests. They stared at their feet, the walls, their shoes, anywhere but me. All but one. Only my boyfriend, Miles, looked at me. His eyes burned with a mix of rage and sympathy. He gave me a small nod. My father grinned, triumphant. I turned and climbed the stairs without looking back. Each step landed with finality. I went into my bedroom and shut the door behind me. I changed out of my formal dress into jeans and a sweater. I dragged out my half-packed suitcase and began stuffing the rest of my essentials inside. Then my eyes caught the photo on the wall. Me and my parents on graduation day, smiling, proud. That day, my father had handed me a small envelope. Inside were mortgage papers. "A new beginning," he'd said. They had dumped the house payments entirely on me. My first paycheck had vanished trying to save it, but that was only the beginning. A few months later, he said it. "I need a little help, Elena. Just a small debt." "How much?" I asked. $15,000, he replied. "A bit of gambling trouble." I was stunned. I'd known they were struggling, but gambling? "If I don't pay it back," he said, "some dangerous people will get involved. I raised you. I sent you to college. I'm asking for help just this once." Under the weight of emotional pressure and guilt, I used my emergency savings to pay off his debt, money I had slowly set aside through part-time jobs during college. Then came my mother's car trouble, which later turned out to be for cosmetic surgery, a sudden medical emergency that turned out to be a lie, and my father's business investment, which was really just another gambling debt. At first, I believed these were just unfortunate coincidences. But over time, the pattern became undeniable. They were always using my kindness. Every time I got promoted, every time I received a bonus, a new financial emergency appeared, and through it all, I kept paying their mortgage. Whenever I bought something, for myself, a new outfit, a small vacation, sometimes even just lunch, they called me selfish and ungrateful. I tried setting boundaries more than once, but each time the emotional blackmail came back. We gave up everything for you. Real family supports each other. They always knew how to press my guilt button, making me feel like I owed them something. Meeting Miles was the turning point. He saw my situation from the outside and pointed out the truth. My parents were financially exploiting me. I didn't want to believe it at first. The idea that my own parents were intentionally using me felt impossible. Miles encouraged me to start tracking my finances. When I did, the truth hit me hard. Over the past 5 years, most of my income had gone straight to them. "This isn't love, Elena," Miles said gently. "This is exploitation." And slowly, I began to see everything through a new lens. I remembered that moment now, as I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account. My fingers hesitated for only a second. Automatic mortgage payment canceled. I had just dismantled the financial scaffolding of their lives. I transferred the remaining funds from our joint account into my personal one. Then, a knock at the door, Elena Miles's voice. "You okay? Can I come in?" I opened a door and let him in. He took one look around the room and understood immediately. "Need help packing?" he asked simply. "Thanks," I said, "but there's still one more thing I need to do." He glanced at the screen, and a quiet understanding passed over his face. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "You have every right to do this, Elena. What they've done to you," he shook his head. "There are no words. I keep wondering how they'll react," I admitted, "but I know it's going to be ugly. I've already been hurt enough." "Come stay with me," Miles offered. "Starting tonight. There's a guest room. Take all the time you need to figure out your next move." "Thank you," I said sincerely. "There's nothing here worth staying for." He hugged me tightly. "You're making the right choice, Elena. You're strong, you're brave, and more than anything, you're not alone." He picked up my suitcase, and together we walked downstairs. The party had completely unraveled. Most of the guests were gone. My father was passed out in a chair, drunk. My mother stared blankly into her wine glass. As we walked by, she looked up but said nothing. At the front door, I paused and took one last look inside. Memories flashed. Christmas mornings, summer barbecues in the backyard, doing homework at the kitchen table, a house that had slowly transformed from love and trust into financial manipulation. "Goodbye," I said softly and stepped out. The sound of the door closing behind me felt like the final chapter of my old life being sealed shut. Months passed. Then one morning, my phone buzzed violently. One glance at the screen shattered my calm. Missed calls, all from my parents, along with several unknown numbers. No doubt relatives or neighbors. They had rallied to their side. I didn't check the voicemails right away. I just stared at the notifications, feeling that familiar stir of guilt bubble up. But I pressed it down firmly. Lying back, I tapped the first message. "My cousin Howard. Got a notice the mortgage hasn't been paid. Uncle Richard is smashing furniture. Aunt Margot's having some kind of dramatic meltdown." I set the phone down. I didn't respond. I wasn't rushing to solve their crisis. Not this time. A new notification. Another voicemail. Curiosity won, and I hit play on speaker. My mother's voice trembled. "Please, there's been some terrible misunderstanding. You wouldn't just abandon us like this. Call us. Whatever's wrong, we can talk it through. We're family." I closed my eyes for a moment and let her words dissolve into the sunlit room. It's remarkable how quickly just a burden turns into, "Please help us when the mortgage payment doesn't show up." A text from my father. "You'll regret betraying your family like this. No warmth, no confusion, just cold, threatening rage." Another vibration, a message from Aunt Vivian. "Did you really abandon your parents after everything they sacrificed for?" Your success? This is how you show gratitude? Your father's health is deteriorating rapidly. He hasn't eaten in 48 hours. The phone suddenly felt like it weighed $1,000 Libby. A knot twisted in my stomach. Guilt worked with surgical precision, breaking down the defenses I had carefully built, as if it had just been waiting beneath the surface. For a moment like this, I reread the message over and over. What if they truly were suffering? What if my actions had been too harsh? The guilt grew heavier throughout the day. Aunt Vivian's message was just the opening volley. Calls poured in. Relatives who usually ignored my existence suddenly had urgent opinions. Do you understand how serious Richard's condition is? Came Aunt Wendy's sharp voice in one voicemail. Yes, families disagree, but this kind of abandonment crosses a moral line. Have you even considered your mother's fragile emotional state? Uncle Tom said in another. This stress could send her into a total breakdown. Each message cracked my resolve a little more. Maybe I was heartless. Maybe I was the villain. Maybe. Then another buzz, a text from Howard. Uncle Richard is losing it. Aunt Margot might need to be hospitalized if this keeps up. I stared at the screen, the realization knocking the breath from my lungs. This wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't accountability. It was strategy. Just another performance. They didn't miss me. They missed my financial support. This time, I let the full weight of that truth settle. Years of one-sided sacrifice, support never acknowledged, endless giving, hoping someday for gratitude from people who were incapable of. It didn't hurt anymore. What I felt was sharper, clearer, crystallized. Miles didn't say anything at first. He just handed me a mug and sat beside me. You okay? He asked. I've had enough, I told him. I can't let their lies go unchallenged anymore. He nodded. To protect your peace and your name, you need to tell the truth. I had 5 years' worth of financial documents organized in folders, mortgage payments, utility bills, their credit card statements, and countless transfers covering Richard's gambling debts. As a lawyer, Miles helped me format everything into a clear professional presentation. We built a financial timeline month by month, from the day I graduated college to the day I left their house. Every dollar I had contributed, and for what purpose. The actual totals were staggering. On average, I had paid more than $1,500 a month for 5 years, just to keep them afloat. Are you planning to post this publicly, Miles? Asked no. I shook my head. I'm only sharing it with family. I sent the message carefully, individually to relatives. There have been recent attempts to damage my reputation. I had hoped to avoid addressing them, but I now feel it's necessary to share the truth. I paid my parents' mortgage and covered many of their living expenses. I chose to help them, but recently it's become clear that the relationship has been one-sided and exploitative. On my 28th birthday, they called me nothing but a burden and demanded that I leave their home immediately. Financial records are available, upon request to any family member who wishes to review them. I hold no hatred toward my parents. I truly hope they live well and peacefully, but from now on, without my involvement. I won't be commenting further on this matter. I ask for your respect and privacy. Miles nodded. Clear, factual, not emotional. It's perfect. This ends here, I said. Whatever comes next, that's their burden. Within hours, the responses began. The first was from Howard. Elena, I'm at your parents' house. I showed your documentation to everyone. They're stunned, especially the aunts. No one knew you'd been supporting them like that. Then a message from Aunt Vivian. Elena, I just had it out with your father. At first, he insisted you were lying, but when Tom showed him the records, he changed. I told him how ashamed he should feel. Can we talk? Miles sat beside me as I read through the flood of messages. How are you feeling? He asked. Free, I said. For the longest time, I was afraid their version of the story would be the only one people heard. They were loud. I was quiet, obedient. But now, the truth is out. That weekend, my phone buzzed again. A new message from Uncle Tom. It was a photo, a for sale sign in front of Richard and Margot's house. They were now facing a new financial reality. They would have to deal with the consequences of their actions, just like I had faced the consequences of theirs. The truth was out. It was finally time to move forward. The next few days swept by in a whirlwind of rebuilding. But the day came. Suddenly, a professionally formatted delivery notice arrived. I looked at Miles, his brows lifted as he scanned the legal header, his expression instantly shifting into professional focus. I crossed the marble foyer and opened the door to find a court process server waiting, an official envelope in hand. "Elena?" he asked, voice procedural. "Yes," I replied, feeling the edge of my professional composure falter. He handed me the envelope. "Service of legal notice completed. You've been served. Contact details for legal response are included inside." I acknowledged receipt, calmly shut the door gently, and examined the envelope with detached precision. Carefully, I broke the seal and slid the documents out. My father had initiated legal action against me. The claims were absurdly vindictive yet tactically crafted. Financial misconduct, elder financial abuse, neglect of a dependent caregiver, temper tantrums dressed up in legalese. Miles, sitting beside me, reviewed the documents and immediately slipped into litigation mode. "This is outrageous. They're trying to weaponize the legal system because the financial exploitation stopped." "Not again," I said firmly, rising with resolve. "I won't apologize for defending my financial independence." That afternoon, we met with Miles's senior litigation partner. I laid out everything methodically, professionally. Years of meticulously documented proof, every transfer, every receipt, every documented contribution. They listened intently, asked precise questions, and confirmed they would prepare a powerful countersuit. "Your position is exceptionally strong," Miles's managing partner assured me. "Frankly, your case for countersuit is not just strong, it's undeniable, given the extent of the financial exploitation." I wasn't looking for revenge. I wanted justice. I wanted my professional reputation and financial independence restored. That same afternoon, following their legal counsel, I signed off on a formal counterclaim detailing the years of emotional coercion and systematic financial manipulation. The reaction was immediate. My mother called first, her voice finally laced with rehearsed anguish. "Elena, please, you're tearing this family apart. We've only ever tried to support your success. You're overreacting dramatically." I maintained professional silence. Then came a message from my father, his last calculated threat. "You think you've won. Blood always determines the final outcome." "Family isn't defined by blood," I whispered into the quiet room. "It's defined by the people who recognize and respect your worth." 3 days later, I walked into federal court with a leather portfolio containing neatly prepared legal documents. I was flanked by Miles and his firm's senior litigation partner. Inside the mediation room, my father sat unnaturally upright at the polished conference table. My mother fidgeted beside him, adjusting a designer scarf with shaky fingers. They looked smaller than I remembered. The court-appointed mediator explained professionally and clearly that by pursuing blatantly false claims, they exposed themselves to significant liability for defamation and documented financial abuse. My years of detailed records backed every word. My father's face flushed a sickly crimson. He jumped to his feet, his chair screeching harshly against the polished floor. "This is prosecutorial harassment," he shouted at the mediator. "She's manipulating the system against us." No one acknowledged his outburst. My mother collapsed, forward in a dramatic sob, her wailing echoing unnaturally in the formal space. I remained composed. I said nothing. I needed no justification. As they stormed out, the mediator turned to me and said calmly, "Your documentation is exceptionally persuasive. Don't ever doubt your decision to protect yourself, legally." As I walked out of the courthouse, with each step away from that building, made the weight I had carried for years feel lighter. No more explanations, no more guilt, no more unfair apologies. Months passed. On a cold winter afternoon, I had an unexpected visitor. Aunt Vivian, my father's sister, showed up at our condo unannounced. I invited her in. She sat visibly tense. "Elena, I just came from seeing your parents," she said. "They're struggling." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Financially, that too, but not just that," Vivian explained. "Richard lost his job, His gambling got worse. He apparently used company funds. Their new apartment is far from comfortable. Margot started working part-time, but it's nowhere near enough to maintain the lifestyle they once had. I nodded quietly. They were finally facing the consequences of their actions. They were now realizing just how crucial my financial support had been to their way of life. And beyond that, Vivian added, most of the family has distanced themselves. No one condones what they did, especially now that they know how much you actually supported them. What are you asking of me? I asked plainly. Vivian sighed. Nothing, Elena. I just thought you should know. They seemed genuinely remorseful, at least Margot does. She cries every day. Richard, well, he has a lot of pride. He's not fully there yet, but even he's beginning to change. Have they reached out to me? Vivian asked. No, I said. There's been no direct contact since the court proceedings. They're afraid, Vivian replied. They are afraid you will reject them. The shame is overwhelming, especially now that everything is out in the open. I was silent for a moment. For years, I supported their unstable finances without thanks, without recognition. And only now, after losing what they once took for granted, did they finally understand its value. And its Aunt Vivian, I said carefully. Thank you for telling me, but right now I need to live my own life. I need to move forward. She nodded, her face full of understanding. Of course, Elena. I'm just happy to see you like this. She looked around my new apartment. You really built all this on your own without anyone's help? I had Miles's support, I said, smiling at him. After Vivian left, Miles turned to me. Do you think you'll contact your parents? I stood by the window, watching as winter twilight settled over the city. I don't know yet, I admitted honestly. If they're truly remorseful, they should be the ones to act. But I'm not happy they're suffering. That's not what I ever wanted. A few weeks later, a small envelope arrived at my office, a handwritten note from Margot. Dear Elena, I don't know if this will even reach you, but I felt I had to write. First and foremost, I'm sorry. There's no excuse for what we did. You supported our lives, paid our debts, and instead of showing you gratitude, we pushed you away. That is inexcusable. We're now living with the consequences of our choices. Only now do we really understand how different our lives would have been without your generosity. Richard is struggling, but he's begun to change. He started counseling for his addiction. I'm not asking for anything. No money, no reconciliation. I just want to know that I think of you and hope you're happy and living the life you deserved. And maybe one day, if you're open to it, we could sit down and talk over a cup of coffee. With love, your mother. I read the letter over and over. The words felt sincere, but after years of manipulation and betrayal, trust isn't easily restored. I showed the letter to Miles. He read it carefully, then said gently, It's your call. If you want to reconnect, I'll support that. If you want to keep your distance, I'll support that too. In the end, I didn't respond. I quietly hoped they'd grow from this lesson, and at the same time, I kept learning from my own. That choosing my peace over their toxicity was not just survival, it was growth. The days that followed were quiet, filled with gentle routines at Miles's condo. Brewing coffee, reorganizing my wardrobe, walking to the gourmet market for fresh ingredients. No longer anticipating the next financial crisis. No longer feeling like my existence was a burden. It was unfamiliar, but incredibly precious. Then one day, Miles said, I have a surprise. He led me on a walk along the Charles River, guiding me to a bench. Sit here, he said, reaching into his pocket. Elena, since you came into my life, I've seen what true strength and grace look like. You've shown me what it means to be the best version of yourself in the worst of circumstances. When he knelt down, I gasped, Elena Smith, will you marry me? Tears filled my eyes as I said, yes. The ring was perfect, simple, elegant, exactly what I would have chosen myself. I hadn't forgotten the pain of the past, but I had begun writing a new story, one based on love and respect, a story in which old patterns would never repeat, a story where, for the first time, I had found a family I had chosen. And in this new healthy circle, built by choice, not obligation, I had